Well, hello everyone, my name is Dwi Junayd Adinata and my last digit of my student's ID is 093.
Hello everyone, I'm Matthew Montinson Zega and my abridged name is 134.
Hello everyone, my name is Rafi Islamy and the last part of my name is 213.
Yo, what's up? My name is Danish Rizqullah and my last 3 digit is 226.
Do you think that learning language is merely for understanding grammatical structure and how words can be formed into a sentence? Well, in our daily life, we use language a lot, such as in conversation, discussion, speech, and in writing. In the study of language, we will also examine the context behind spoken and written language that is commonly used for communicating. Well, in this video, we will explore more about beyond individual words and isolated sentence, which is discourse analysis. This topic will consist of the definition of discourse analysis and then cohesion and coherence, speech acts and pragmatics, and also contextualization, and the last is critical discourse analysis. So what is actually discourse analysis? Herman offers a brief definition of discourse analysis in A Guide to Discourse Analysis as a Theory and Practice 2023. Discourse analysis is the study of how language is used to communicate in context. So it is not only about what it is said, but also how it is said, why it is said, and cultural, social, political context that influence communication. Discourse position is about the sentence, while the lowest level or units is phonemes, followed by morphemes, and then words, phrase, clause, sentence, and the highest above all is discourse. Thus, discourse is more than language use. Whether speech or written are seen as a type of social practice. Discourse analysis is a broad methodology with several crucial dimensions. Linguistic studies highlight the following important aspects.
First is cohesion and coherence. A text or speech can be considered as discourse if it connected logically. There are two pillars that used to understand how language can be linked together to create a meaning. Now let's talk about cohesion first. Cohesion is an explicit linguistic device that connected sentence and clauses. Within a text, it involves the use of structural tools such as conjunction, reference, and repetition to connect sentence and paragraph together. Now let's take a look at this sentence. I talked to Professor Lina yesterday, and she told me that linguistic assignment was due on Friday. She is a personal reference pointing backward to the noun phrase, Professor Lina, while me pointing to the speaker. Without her reference tag, the text would fall apart and sound a bit like robot. What about the coherence? It is an overall representation of the text meaning that concern whether the element or part of the statement do not contradict each other and instead actively support each other to deliver the writer's actual intent. Now let's take a look at the sentence. Plastic waste is choking our local river and destroying aquatic ecosystem. Community group must organize bi-weekly cleanups and push for strict local upcycling initiative. This sentence are coherent because it's organized around a recognizable rhetorical pattern. Sentence 1 identify a specific crisis while sentence 2 deliver the solution. The ideas match up perfectly.
In discourse analysis, contextualization simply means using language clues to show how conversation or text should be understood or interpreted. Pioneered by John Gompertz, this approach looks at how speakers drop hints to guide how listeners should interpret the sentence. An utterance carries its own instructions for how to reveal it. There are several things that, in context, we look for. These clues, these small things that can tell more about a given sentence or a few words that people say, hence utterances. We look for acoustic cues, Shifts in intonation, tone of voice, pausing, and speech tempo, like how I'm speaking right now. Physical cues, like the way we move our hands or the way we move our bodies. And also, in a more digital context, how we read our friends' texts on WhatsApp or on other apps, how we view posts on Instagram or on Facebook. These carry digital DXCs and cues that we tend to learn as we read many things on the internet. Let's take a look at a certain scenario. Picture this. Consider a crowded, stuffy lecture hall on a hot afternoon, and the professor stops speaking mid-sentence, wipes his forehead, and asks the student, "Can you open this window?" To understand the real meaning of this discourse, analysts look at different layers of context. We look at the situational context. The stuffy room, the physical distance between the professor and the window, dictates that this is not a literal question about the student's physical ability on whether or not they can open a window. And we look at the interactional context. We see that by halting this lecture and shifting his gaze, the professor uses body language as a contextualization cue. He wipes his forehead. He frames the question as an indirect command rather than an inquiry, meaning that the professor is implying that he needs air, that he needs fresh air because the room is hot. And also, we look at the social and institutional context. The power dynamic in a classroom establishes that an instructor expects a student to comply with this request, be it this simple request to open the window. And also in a pragmatic context, lastly, the listener, that is the student, successfully processes these intersecting clues, infers the underlying goal that it is hot and the professor or the entire class needs ventilation, and proceeds to open the window without saying a word, or by simply saying, "Yes, sir."
Another important aspect of discourse analysis is speech act and pragmatics. Pragmatics study how people understand meaning based on context and not from the literal words itself. Meanwhile, speech act theory, introduced by John Austin and later developed by John Searle, explained that when people speak, they are also performing action. In communication, an utterance is not just a sentence, but it can function as a request, apology, and even a command. For example, imagine a student say this to their friends: "It's really cold here." Now, literally, the sentence is only giving information about the temperature. However, pragmatically, the student may actually be requesting the friends to turn off the air conditioner or close the window. In this case, the listener only understands the intended meaning because of the context and shared understanding between speaker. There are three general types of act. First, the locutionary act, which is the literal meaning of the sentence. Second is illocutionary act, which is the speaker intention behind the sentence. Third is perlocutionary act, which is the effect of the utterance of the listener in the previous example. The locutionary act is the statement about the cold temperature. The illocutionary act is the indirect request, and a perlocutionary act is listener closing the window or turning off the air conditioner.
Last but not least, important aspect of discourse analysis is the critical discourse analysis, or CDA. Now, CDA is an approach that studies language not only as a communication, but a site where power, ideology, and social inequality are produced and reproduced. It questions who benefits from the text, what influence does it carry, and who is being silenced from it. Now, CDA emphasizes 3 points. First, language is not neutral. Every text reflects choices. Word choices carry values and assumptions. Second, language and power are linked. Those who possess power shape dominant discourse, while others are marginalized. Third, discourse produces social norms. Texts help maintain or challenge social cultures and inequalities. The most used CDA method is the three-dimensional model by Norman Fairclough. It's to examine how language use reflects and shapes power dynamics and ideologies. There are 3 layers to break down here. First is the text-level analysis that consists of word, grammar, and structure. The second layer is discursive practice that analyzes how text is produced, distributed, and consumed. The third layer is social practice, where it analyzes the broader social context, institution, ideologies, and power. Now, let's look at an example here. The following headline, Freed Gaza flotilla activists accuse Israeli forces of sexual violence and abuse while in custody. CNN 2026. Now, from a text-level analysis, the word accuse blames Israel for the improper acts towards the flotilla activists. From a discursive practice, the flotilla activist is likely a left-wing tabloid newspaper. And from a social practice, it's antagonizing Israel for the inappropriate action towards those activists.
In essence, discourse analysis is the practice of seeing and breaking down what goes beyond language, be it written or spoken, that we perceive. Whether consciously or not, we tend to analyze discourse ourselves in our day-to-day lives, from the text that we send to each other, to the formal articles that we see as students. Discourse analysis is used to understand things that need more than just the understanding of the language, and more about society and the world that uses it. With that said, we hope that our explanation of this subject can help others understand what discourse analysis is and what and how it is used in practice.